Hi, very glad to see you on the channel. Before you start listening to the story, write in the comments whether you like the voice on the video. I was only gone for 3 days. Fishing trip out by Beaver Lake with my cousin Nate and his loudmouth friend Wade. No cell service, plenty of bait, and a cooler that stayed heavy until it didn't. We came back Sunday afternoon, sunburnt, smelling like victory, and all too eager to return to a shower and air conditioning. But when I opened the door to the house, something immediately felt off. It wasn't messy. Katie always kept things neat, even when she was buried in her Etsy orders or school paperwork. The house looked fine. Too fine. Every pillow perfectly square, no shoes by the door, her water cup on the kitchen counter sitting full, like it had been placed there as a prop. Her laptop was open, but the screen was dark, untouched. I walked in slowly, trying to shake off the unease. Maybe I was just tired. She came downstairs a few minutes later, wearing one of my hoodies like always, but her hair was done. Makeup too. Light, subtle. Just enough to notice if you knew her the way I did. "Hey, babe," she said, smiling like she wasn't expecting me for another few hours. "I didn't hear you come in. Yeah, we left early. Rain's coming through." She nodded. "Did you catch anything?" "3 bass, 1 got away." She laughed politely, and I could see her mind was somewhere else. She kissed me quickly, barely brushing my lips, and grabbed her phone off the counter. "I was just talking to Ryan," she said casually, like the name wasn't supposed to mean anything. "He's in town this week. From high school, remember?" "Vaguely. He's just passing through. We grabbed coffee Friday." I didn't say anything right away, just nodded. "You hang out the house?" She shook her head too quickly. "No, we just walked around the square. It was nice catching up. That's all." Something about the way she said that last part, "that's all," stuck with me. Like she'd rehearsed it. Like she was already defending a story no one asked for. I took my bag upstairs, unpacked slowly, kept my ears open. Katie stayed downstairs. I heard her pacing, her voice low in a phone call, though I couldn't make out the words. I walked to the landing and leaned into the banister just in time to hear her say, "No, he's back early. I know. Just don't worry about it." The next morning, I went into the garage to grab a wrench. The place was spotless. Equipment arranged like we were expecting a tour. I hadn't cleaned it. Neither had she, unless she had a reason to. That evening, as I prepped dinner, our neighbor Lisa waved at me through the kitchen window. Her face carried that polite Southern concern, the kind that says, "I want to tell you something, but also don't want to get involved." I stepped outside while the pasta boiled. "You just get back?" she asked. "Yeah, weekend trip." She hesitated. "Just curious, did you have someone watching the house while you were gone?" "Nope." She glanced at the garage. Maybe your camera caught something weird. I heard noises Saturday night. From the gym. Thought about calling you, but figured it was probably nothing." My stomach dropped a degree. "What kind of noises?" She looked embarrassed. "Just odd. Rhythmic. A bit loud. I assumed y'all had guests or something." I laughed, trying to brush it off. Could have been the AC acting up. She didn't buy it, but she didn't press. Maybe. That night, while Katie showered, I checked the feed. Our garage security cam was offline. Disconnected. Manually. I went out there myself, flashlight in hand. The camera was unplugged, wire tucked behind the cabinet like it had been carefully hidden. I stared at it for a long time. Ryan. That name echoed louder now. But something told me if I brought it up, she'd already have an answer. A neat, practiced, friendly little lie. I walked back inside and smiled as she came downstairs in her pajamas. "Hey, babe," she said, curling next to me. "You good?" "Yeah," I said. "Just glad to be home." And in that moment, I wasn't thinking about the fish I caught or the storms we missed. I was thinking about what had happened in my garage and why she had tried so hard to erase it. By Tuesday morning, the unease hadn't gone away. If anything, it had sharpened, like a splinter that buries itself deeper with every step. Katie was in her usual rhythm, packing her tote, humming while she poured her coffee, brushing past me with a kiss like everything was fine. But I kept thinking about Lisa's words, the way she'd glanced at the garage like it was haunted. After Katie left for work, I grabbed my keys and headed back out there. The gym was spotless. Too spotless. No towels left behind, no stray hair ties, no water bottles. But as I looked closer, something tugged at my attention, Beneath the squat rack, near the baseboard, was a tiny fleck of red. I crouched down and picked it up, a fragment of a ribbon. Satin, with a crimp like it had been tied and untied fast. Not the kind we kept around. Katie didn't use them, and I definitely didn't. I stood up slowly, eyeing the room like it was a crime scene. On the bench press, the foam padding was slightly shifted, like someone heavier had sat there recently. A faint smear of something dark along the backrest. Not blood, more like smudged makeup. I ran my finger over it, and it flaked. Lipstick? That's when I started checking the drawers. Beneath the cabinet where we kept our jump ropes and resistance bands, there was a small, black velvet box wedged in the corner behind a stack of folded yoga mats. It looked out of place. I pulled it out, heart thudding. Inside was a men's bracelet, leather with a silver clasp, engraved. It read, R. You never left me. My stomach tightened. There were only a handful of people in Katie's life who'd have a name starting with R, and only one she ever talked about with that odd mix of nostalgia and casual distance. Ryan, high school sweetheart. On again, off again. According to her, they broke up clean before she went to college. Just kids figuring things out, she once said with a dismissive shrug. He's history. But apparently, history had come back and gotten a gift. I walked back inside, set the box on the table, and stared at it like it might rearrange itself into something innocent. It didn't. That evening, as Katie chopped veggies for a stir-fry, I leaned on the counter and asked, You hear from Ryan again? She didn't flinch. Briefly. He flew back yesterday. Fast trip. She nodded. Yeah, he was just passing through. Said he might not be back for a while. I took a sip of water. You guys catch up much? She paused and smiled. A little. Honestly, it was nice talking about old times. Felt like closure, you know? I nodded. You give him a send-off gift? She laughed. What kind of question is that? Just wondering. She shook her head. No, Vilan. I didn't. And right there she lied. Flat and calm, like she'd rehearsed it. Her tone never changed. Her hands never stopped slicing. That was the most chilling part, how easily it rolled off her tongue. I didn't press. Didn't ask where she kept the bracelet. Didn't say it was sitting in my jacket pocket upstairs. Instead, after dinner, while she graded papers on the couch, I took the bracelet outside to the shed, found my soldering kit, and carefully pried open the clasp. I filled it with a tiny pinch of salt and adhesive, resealed it, and left it near the bottom of her gym bag the next day. It wouldn't ruin it immediately, but over time, it would corrode from within, just like whatever she thought she was hiding. The game had changed. I didn't need to yell. I just needed to wait and watch her secrets rot from the inside out. A week passed, and the bracelet stayed buried in Katie's gym bag. She hadn't mentioned it, hadn't shown any signs of noticing the corrosion I'd built into it. But she carried that bag everywhere now. To her workout classes, to the library, even a brunch with her sister last Sunday. I began to think maybe she was hiding it in plain sight. Maybe the bracelet wasn't meant to be worn, just treasured like a relic from a secret life. My patience wore thinner by the day. I checked the security cam in the garage again, finally reconnected it to see what it had captured since I restored power. Nothing. Days of mundane emptiness, followed by Katie alone, doing squats or rowing with mechanical focus. Earphones in, nothing suspicious. But it was the silence that unnerved me most. That Thursday, I got my first real lead, or what I thought was one. I was at the gas station when I spotted him. A tall guy, lean, wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses like he didn't want to be recognized. He pulled up in a gray rental and walked toward the checkout with a quiet urgency. I wouldn't have looked twice, except Katie had mentioned a teacher friend from high school stopping by campus that same day. Not Ryan, she clarified when I asked. Someone else. Dean. He teaches history in Memphis. The man at the station looked like someone who belonged in an old yearbook. Aged just enough, confident, but keeping his head low. I waited for him to leave, then followed his car at a distance. He drove to the rec center on Main, parked, and went inside. 10 minutes later, Katie's car pulled up beside his. They didn't hug. They didn't touch. But they went in together. I stayed out of sight. 2 hours passed before they came back out, chatting. She laughed at something, brushed her hair behind her ear, looked younger for a second. They drove off separately. I went home and waited. Katie came in late, said she'd stayed to help Dean organize material for a school event. He's trying to pitch a cross-district history program, she explained, kicking off her shoes. Wants to get alumni involved. I nodded slowly. Sounds productive. It was. She smiled and kissed my cheek. He's harmless, Dylan. Relax. She said it so easily that I believed her for a moment. Until I remembered the footage. The security cam had recorded everything. I pulled it up the next morning. 2 hours of grainy garage silence. Then movement. Katie, alone. No Dean. No second car. No babysitter. Just her. She'd lied. But not about Dean. She'd used him as a cover. Layered enough to seem plausible, vague enough to avoid scrutiny. And that's when it hit me. I've been looking in the wrong place. Dean wasn't the one. I scrubbed the feed from the previous weekend. The night Lisa mentioned hearing something. There it was. Movement. Shadows. A man entering through the side gate. Slim. Confident. No hesitation. Katie let him in, checked over her shoulder, and led him straight into the gym. The timestamp matched the night she claimed she was out grocery shopping for surprise dessert ingredients. The man wasn't Dean, and he wasn't a stranger. He was someone she didn't want me to ever suspect. But I still didn't know who he was. Not yet. That night, Katie brought home takeout and played her part perfectly. Laughed at her own stories, asked me how work was, leaned into me like nothing was wrong. I watched her, silent, my fork untouched. She noticed. You okay? Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Just tired. She kissed me on the cheek. Get some rest. But rest was the last thing on my mind. Because whoever that man was, he was confident enough to walk through my backyard. And if Katie thought I wouldn't find him, she had no idea who she was married to. I spent the next 2 days tracking her rhythm. Katie had habits, little rituals she didn't even realize were predictable. Morning lemon water, daily scroll through Facebook memories, and a workout exactly 26 minutes after getting home, like she was following a script. And that gym bag, still there, still zipped shut and sitting by the door like a loyal dog waiting for a secret errand. On Saturday, I installed a motion-activated cam in the hallway across from the garage, pointed low. Hidden in the corner where the molding jutted out from the floorboard. Nothing fancy, but clear enough to catch movement and audio. I'd already checked the security footage from the gym's ceiling cam, but the angle was terrible, more shadows than detail. I needed something cleaner. Katie had been quiet lately, in that overly cheerful way. She asked more questions than usual. Wanted to know if I needed anything. If I wanted to do something together soon. It wasn't guilt. She was too smooth for guilt. It was distraction, diversion. I didn't answer half the time. Just nodded and let her keep talking. Sunday morning, she said she had brunch plans with Jamie, her co-worker from the elementary school. She's been a mess since the divorce, Katie said, tying her hair up in the mirror. Thought I'd take her out, cheer her up. That's kind of you. She smiled. You'd do the same. Depends on who's asking, I said, sipping my coffee. She laughed, kissed the top of my head, and left like everything was normal. I gave it 15 minutes, then checked the hallway cam from my phone. Right on cue, she came back through the side gate. Didn't even go through the front door. Just straight into the garage in workout clothes, hair still done, no brunch energy at all. Another 15 minutes passed, then a knock at the back fence. She opened it from inside. There he was. Same man. Baseball cap. Hoodie. Face turned away from the cam, but this time I caught the shirt, dark blue with a faint logo. The local fire department. That narrowed it fast. Only a handful of guys on that crew matched the build, and just 2 were single. One of them was Ryan. I sat there, frozen, staring at the paused image. I'd seen him once before, years ago, at a 4th of July barbecue Katie insisted we attend. He'd come alone, parked across the street, stayed quiet most of the night. When I asked her how well they knew each other, she shrugged. We dated in high school, she said, dismissing it like it was a childhood memory. Apparently, it was more than a memory now. That night, Katie returned home hours later, hair slightly messy, no leftovers, no brunch stories. She didn't even bring up Jamie. Good talk, I asked, standing by the sink. Yeah, she said. She's struggling, poor thing. But we had a good laugh. I didn't say anything. Just watched her walk past me, up the stairs, phone glued to her hand. I waited until the hallway was quiet again before checking the garage cam one more time. Their voices came through this time, low, muffled, but enough. Her, you have to be quick. He's been acting different. Him, he doesn't know anything. Her, he's smarter than he lets on. Just be quiet. My chest went still. It wasn't rage anymore. It was something colder, more focused. They thought they had time. Thought I'd stay blind and polite and married. They were wrong. And now that I knew the who and the where, it was just a matter of when. By Monday, my patience wasn't fraying. It was focused. I was done second-guessing, done looking for signs or asking questions I already had the answers to. I wasn't looking to explode. I wasn't going to scream. That would have let her dictate the pace. No, I wanted this to settle around her slowly, like dust from ceiling caving in. Quiet at first, then undeniable. I just needed to catch her in the act. Not for closure. Not even for proof. I already had that. I wanted precision. I started tracking her phone location. Not through any app, but using the router's access log and a device I slipped into her gym bag when she wasn't looking. A low-energy tracker, set to ping my laptop when the device left and return home. It wasn't military grade, but it was enough to triangulate her path every time she left for yoga. I kept a log. Tuesday, 6:12 p.m., she left the house. Pinged near the trailhead. Never entered the yoga studio she claimed. Returned 7:48 p.m. Wednesday. 6 p.m. left with fresh makeup. Bag slung across her shoulder like she wasn't planning to sweat. I followed from a distance this time. Kept 4 cars back until she took a turn off the main road and circled a block twice before parking near a small lot next to an empty field. A gray truck was already there. Ryan's. He didn't even bother hiding it. She got out, looked around once, pointless, and opened the side gate of an empty rental property. They slipped in through the back entrance. 5 minutes later, lights flicked on inside the garage. She had a key. I sat there in my car, gripping the steering wheel like I was holding back an avalanche. The betrayal wasn't new, but watching it unfold like a routine, that was different. It wasn't a slip. It wasn't emotion. It was strategy. They were using that garage like it was a hotel room they didn't have to pay for. I didn't move, just stared through the windshield, the dark outlines shifting behind that fogged-up window in the distance. My fingers hovered over the camera app on my phone, but I didn't need more video. What I needed was timing. I waited 42 minutes before their silhouettes separated. She came out first, adjusting her hoodie, tying her hair back. Ryan followed, stretching his arms like he'd just had a long nap. They laughed. It was casual, and I was done. The next morning, Katie was all smiles again. I'm thinking we should do something for my birthday, she said over coffee. Low-key. Maybe just a few people over. Lisa, Natalie, casual fun. I nodded. Sure. Sounds good. You be okay hosting? Absolutely, I said, smiling into my cup. She leaned in and kissed my cheek. You're the best. And in that moment, she handed me the opportunity one didn't know I needed. Her birthday. Perfect timing. A setting she couldn't control. She walked out the door humming to herself, probably already planning cake flavors and what dress she'd wear to impress her friends. She had no idea I'd already made my own guest list. And this time, I wouldn't be watching from screen. I'd be in the room. The day before her birthday, Katie was practically glowing. She buzzed through the house like a party planner on a caffeine high, laying out candles, checking playlists, texting nonstop. She said she had a quick errand to run that afternoon, a last-minute stop to pick up decorations Lisa couldn't find. I smiled, nodded, and asked if she needed help. Nope, she chirped. I'll be fast. Be back in an hour. She was gone 2.5. I already knew where she went. I'd watch her gym bag leave with her. Not her purse, just a bag. And when the hallway tracker pinged, I saw her head east, not toward Lisa's, but toward that same rundown rental lot. Same pattern. Same gray truck. Ryan was already there waiting. This time, I followed on foot after parking down the block. I moved slow, careful, stuck to the tree lean by the property. There were no blinds on the garage window, just a half-lowered tarp duct taped to the top. From the angle I found, I could see inside just enough shadows, outlines, movement. I crouched low, heart slow and steady. Their voices drifted through the cracked window. Muffled laughter, Ryan's terrible jokes, Katie's mock scolding. Like a bad sitcom. Then silence. Just the hum of the old generator and the occasional creak of shifting weight on equipment that used to belong to me. They hadn't even covered the security cam properly this time. It captured everything from above, just enough detail. I'd reactivated it weeks ago without telling Katie. Wired it to a backup card. I didn't need sound, just sight. I stood there for a while long after I had what I needed, watching them linger like they had all the time in the world. That's what got me most. How safe they felt. How certain they were that I was clueless. By the time I got home, Katie was already inside. She didn't say where she'd gone. Didn't offer the excuse she'd rehearsed. She just kissed my cheek like it was any other day. I didn't mention the footage. Didn't bring up the truck. I asked what time she wanted people to arrive tomorrow, if she'd settled on the playlist. She told me 6 p.m. sharp and said she'd order balloons online. I texted Lisa that night. You still good for tomorrow? She sent back a thumbs up and a winking emoji. And Natalie? Double confirmed, Lisa wrote. Perfect. I slept better than I had in weeks. The next morning, Katie was in full hostess mode. Cleaning, adjusting, texting. Her phone never left her hand. I watched her open her wardrobe and try on 3 dresses before settling on one she'd said she didn't like anymore just a week ago. Can't wait to see you in party mode, she teased, spraying perfume as she walked past me. I smiled. I'm saving my energy. She didn't question it. The guests began arriving a little after 6. Nothing extravagant. Just a dozen people from her friend circle, a couple of neighbors, one of her co-workers. Laughter filled the house. Music buzzed softly under the surface. Katie beamed as people complimented the setup. And then, right on time, the front door opened again. Lisa stepped in first. Then Natalie, both wearing matching robes. And behind them, no one, just the 2 of them. Katie's smile faltered. Lisa grinned wide. Hope you don't mind. We came straight from the spa. Katie blinked. Spa? Natalie said, looping her arm through mine like it had always been there. Dylan invited us. Said it was your day, but we could help set the mood. I took a sip from my glass and rested my hand on Natalie's hip. Katie's face paled. I was going to light your candles, I said, lifting my glass, but I blew off some steam instead. The room went silent. Katie's hand twitched at her side. Someone coughed awkwardly in the back. Natalie leaned in and kissed my cheek. You weren't exaggerating. He really is the quiet type. Katie turned on her heel and stormed out of the room, the sound of her heels sharp against the floor, cutting through the silence. I didn't follow, didn't call after her, didn't care, because for the first time, she was exactly where she belonged. Alone, while the rest of us celebrated her favorite day. The morning after her birthday, the house was quiet. Katie hadn't come home, not even a text. The only sign she'd been there was a smeared lipstick print on a paper towel left on the upstairs sink. Hurried, messy, like she'd wiped her mouth mid-breakdown. I found it just after sunrise and tossed it in the trash without a second thought. Whatever apology she was practicing in the mirror last night, it wouldn't be heard here. I brewed coffee, made toast, and sent Lisa and Natalie a thank you message. Natalie replied first. You were ice cold. I'm impressed. Then a follow-up. Drinks again soon? I smiled. The revenge hadn't ended at the party. That was only the ignition. Later that afternoon, I visited the local print shop. I handed the clerk a USB with 1 image file and asked for 30 glossy prints, 5x7. He glanced at the preview, blinked, and said nothing. Envelope them separately, I said. Unmarked. I'll be back in an hour. The image was taken from the overhead cam in the garage. Not explicit, just undeniable. Katie and Ryan, mid-conversation, his hand on her hip, her face tilted up toward him like they were the only people on the planet. I chose that frame on purpose. Emotional intimacy. The kind that would hurt worse than anything physical. By the time I returned, the envelopes were ready. Plain sealed. I wrote addresses across each one in quiet satisfaction. Katie's mother. Her sister in Little Rock. The school district office, care of her HR rep, 2 of her church friends. Even the manager of the boutique where she used to work weekends. I didn't need to send them all. Just enough to light small fires in enough places that she'd never be sure which burned her first. At the post office, I used the self-service kiosk. No return address. No fingerprints on the fallout. That evening, I changed the locks. Katie still hadn't come back. I knew she was staying with someone. Probably not Ryan. Not after the party humiliation. My guess was a friend from school who hadn't yet opened their envelope. But soon they'd know too. I started moving her things into the garage. Boxed neatly. Labeled. Folded carefully to avoid the petty satisfaction she might accuse me of. There was no spite in the way I handled her favorite hoodie or the photo frame she never took off her desk. This wasn't an act of anger. It was eviction wrapped in precision. The next morning, I received a text from her. I need to come by and talk. I didn't reply. She tried again 2 hours later. Can we meet? Just 5 minutes. Please. Still nothing. By noon, she sent, I don't deserve to be ghosted. You owe me a conversation. I chuckled when I read that. Oh, as if her betrayal came with a clause that forced me to entertain her regret. I waited until late evening, then sent a single response. Your things are in the garage. Don't knock. Just take them and go. 10 minutes later, the driveway camera pinged. Katie's car. She stepped out cautiously, glanced at the front window, then made her way to the garage. She opened the door and froze, staring at the boxes like they were loaded with explosives. She stood there for several minutes, unmoving. Then she grabbed a box, loaded it into her back seat, came back for another. She didn't take them all. She left the last one, the one labeled miscellaneous, garage. Inside that one, the corroded bracelet, the motion tracker, and a printed copy of the video feed from that night. She thought no one was watching. She didn't even open the box. She just closed the trunk, got in, and drove away. No slam of the door. No shouty demands. Just silence. The kind that follows when someone finally realizes they don't have the upper hand anymore. And me? I poured another drink, sat on the porch, and watched the last rays of daylight hit the street she used to call home. She thought she could rewrite the narrative. But I'd already published the ending. It had been a week since Katie last stepped onto the porch. A week since I watched her drive off with half her belongings and the full weight of her decisions dragging behind her. In that time, the house had grown quieter, lighter. Not in some spiritual way, just cleaner, stiller. No second toothbrush in the cup. No shed hair in the bathroom drain. No perfume lingering like a lie in the hallway. Just space. Space I didn't know I needed. Then, on Friday morning, she returned. I heard the tires before I saw her. Slow roll over gravel, hesitant, careful. I glanced out the window and saw her standing at the base of the steps. Same hoodie she wore during those early spring evenings when things were still good. Hair pulled back. No muck-up. A paper envelope in one hand. A thermos in the other. Like she thought the right costume could rewind the tape. I opened the door but didn't step out. You shouldn't be here, I said calmly. I just want to talk, she replied, her voice tighter than before. 5 minutes. I looked at the envelope. What's in your hand? She held it up slightly. Just something I wrote. I couldn't text it. It would have come out wrong. Try me, I said, arms crossed. Her throat worked as she swallowed. I messed up, Dylan. I know I did. I got swept up in something stupid, something that didn't mean anything. That's not true. I cut in. You gave it meaning every time you lied about it. She flinched. I know, but I didn't stop loving you. That never changed. Didn't stop you from erasing me. She stepped forward, hopeful. I can fix this. No, I said firmly. You can't. Tears welled in her eyes, but didn't fall. You were always so steady. So good. I didn't think I could lose you, Dylan. You were the one thing I thought would never walk away. That's the problem, I said. You thought I was a doormat. You thought being reliable meant being blind. She opened the envelope and tried to hand it to me. Please, just read this. I didn't take it. No, her voice cracked. You really hate me that much? I don't feel anything for you anymore. That's worse, isn't it? She lowered the envelope slowly. You were everything to me. This house. This life. I was just restless. So you burned it. She wrapped her arms around herself. Ryan didn't matter. I swear. It was just easy. He made me feel wanted again. But I see it now. It was shallow. It was stupid. You had a choice, I said. Every time you answered his messages. Every time you walked into that garage. Every time you lied to my face. That wasn't confusion, Katie. That was comfort. She sniffed, eyes darting toward the door behind me like she could still cross the threshold and return to something that no longer existed. I don't even know where to go now. That's not my problem. I loved you, she whispered. You loved what I gave you. You loved the safety, the consistency, but you didn't respect it. I was scared, she said, voice rising. Scared of being ordinary. Of waking up 10 years from now, wondering what I missed. Well, I said, you found out. We stood in silence. She looked down at the envelope again, then slowly ripped it in half. Paper fluttered in the breeze, bits landing on the steps between us. Nothing I say matters, does it? She said quietly. Nope. She wiped her face, nodded once, then turned to leave. Halfway down the walk, she stopped and looked back. You'll regret this. No, I said. You will. She left. Didn't slam the door. Didn't scream. Just walked away from the wreckage she caused, hoping someone else might forget how she built it. I stepped back inside, locked the door, and exhaled. This wasn't triumph. It was just closure, and the final chapter of a book I'd never read again. It's strange how silence becomes a companion. Not the awkward kind, but the kind that fills a room like sunlight through a clean window. After Katie left that day, really left, I didn't rush to fill the space she vacated. I didn't redecorate, didn't hit the dating apps. I didn't even move her coffee mug from the top shelf where she always insisted it belonged. I just adjusted, like shifting your weight after carrying something heavy for too long. Mornings became quieter, but not lonelier. I started waking up earlier, walking to the diner on the corner where Miss Lillian still poured the strongest coffee in town and asked nothing but the usual. The people there didn't ask questions. They just slid me a plate, let me eat in peace, and nodded when I left. Work picked up again. The garage got cleaned. The tools I'd neglected for weeks found their way back to the bench, and soon I was knee-deep in rebuilding a '78 Bronco a neighbor had let sit for years. There was a comfort in gears and grit, something honest in the way metal clicked into place when you didn't rush it. You can't cheat a restoration. It either fits or it doesn't. A few weeks in, I bumped into Natalie again. Not planned, not forced. Just a run-in at the farmer's market. Both of us reaching for the same overpriced jar of honey. She laughed, stepped back, and said, "Still rescuing people from themselves?" "Not anymore," I said. We walked the stalls together, not holding hands, not flirting, just talking. She told me Lisa moved in with a guy she met at trivia night, that Katie had apparently moved 2 towns over to start fresh, whatever that meant. She hasn't been seen much since, Natalie said, then looked at me sideways. You okay with that? I'm perfect with that. And I meant it. I started picking up new routines. Joined a weekend hiking group, half made up of people over 50, all with stronger calves than mine. Picked up woodworking again. Nothing fancy, just chairs and shelf for neighbors who'd stop by with if you have time projects. I had the time. I wanted to focus. Somewhere in between those quiet months, I found the rhythm Katie once feared so much. The predictability, the so-called ordinary. But it wasn't dull. It was earned. I was no longer the man waiting for betrayal to end. I was a man who had walked through it barefoot and come out with his own 2 feet. Eventually, I cleared out the garage completely. Every trace of what happened in there gone. New paint, new layout. It became a workspace, not a memory. I installed a new cam, not out of paranoia, but precision. Control wasn't about watching people anymore. It was about owning the space I stood in. The invites started rolling in around spring, barbecues, lake trips, a cousin's wedding. I went, sometimes with friends, sometimes alone. I stopped needing to explain why I came without a +1. Eventually, they stopped asking. The town never said it aloud, but people knew. Small towns always know. They'd seen the shift. The looks. The silence between Katie and me at the store that one time she passed by and didn't speak. That was enough for everyone to draw their own lines. The funny thing is, I didn't miss her. I missed who I thought she was. But once the mask dropped, it was easier to breathe without her. Months later, as I sat on my porch watching the sun tip low across the rooftops, Lisa walked by with her dog. She waved, slowed her pace. "You look good," she said. "I feel good. You finally got your piece?" "Yeah," I said, "and I'm not giving it back." She smiled and moved on, the wind catching her jacket as she turned the corner. And me? I leaned back, sipped my tea, and listened to the quiet house behind me, the one that no longer echoed with lies, the one that belonged to me. Again, thank you for listening to the end. I hope you enjoyed it very much. Don't forget to give a like and tell us in the comments what you would do in such a situation.